I basically made about $6,000 a month on average, for this property. My mortgage payment was literally like $1,400, man. So I was like cash flowing like crazy. Ended up moving in the duplex. My wife hated me for it, but we moved in it and now we live for free. So that's basically my story of, how I went from, starting in the short-term rental business, some of the bumps that I went through, and how I got to the point where so basically it was a story just like anybody else's, man. I'm in my mid 40s and, I started thinking about, retirement. Like, when am I going to be able to retire? And, if I'm going to be able to retire comfortably. And I had been going through some changes in my life where my mindset was truly shifting, and the things that were important to me were pretty much changing. And I would say this evolution started probably about 5 or 6 years ago, where, I just wasn't that happy when I was buying stuff, right? When I was buying stuff, the newest cars and stuff really didn't do for me what it used to. Jewelry didn't do what it used to do for me. And, clothes and, all those type of things didn't do what it used to do for me. And it was one of those things where, I never really had to do those things to impress my wife. But, we kind of grow up in a world where we're kind of brainwashed into believing that, we need to look a certain way or do certain things to be valuable in this world. And I kind of just fell into it, just like, most people do. And so, over time, I just started really realizing that, those things didn't do a lot for me anymore. So I slowly started changing. And what I mean by that is, like, I slowly stopped buying a whole bunch of clothes. I slowly stopped just keep getting new cars. And I slowly just started doing other things. And so I think really what spurred it on, really the trigger, was really my daughter graduating from college. I think that was really the trigger. And after my daughter graduated from college, like, my life really didn't revolve around, chasing her basketball life, right? She was a high-end Division I athlete where, we went to a whole bunch of the games and stuff like that. And so, I was always wanting to look a certain way when I went to her games. I wanted to have on nice clothes and stuff. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I don't want to say that's a bad thing, but, it kind of helped me keep that mentality. And that mentality started back when, she was on the AAU circuit. And, I had that same mentality. And any parent that's like in the AAU circuit knows it's kind of a fashion thing. Like the good kids, they wear certain clothes and stuff. And so I kind of got into it too, along with my daughter. She was one of the top players in the country at the time. So, I thought I needed to have her look a certain way. Then, of course, I was, as her dad, had to look a certain way too. So, I had to keep up with the Joneses. And so, after we got out of that, like, I was less exposed to that type of mindset. It kind of helped my mindset, make it easy for it to shift into something different. And so basically that's what happened. Like, I got away from that stuff and my mindset started shifting. And so I started thinking more about, like, okay, like, Chris, what makes you happy? Like, making you happy used to be going to watch her games, enjoying her, playing ball and stuff like that. But that really wasn't a thing for me anymore. So what made me happy? And so that's when I really started getting into wanting to travel. And, one thing about traveling, man, I mean, I don't care how you do it. You could try to do it with the points and all that stuff. Man, traveling is expensive. Like, the bottom line is, like, to take flights places, to stay in hotels, it's expensive. There's going to be gurus out here and say, oh, man, you can stay places for free. Man, listen, you can get an introductory bonus on American Express card and get 100,000 points. And, maybe you can get that on 2 or 3 cards. But the bottom line is that's only it'll get you a couple of flights and a couple of hotel stays. And then you don't have anything left anymore, right? There's only but so many sign-up bonuses you could get. And then you have to spend money to get those sign-up bonuses. I know they say they got strategies for all of that, but the bottom line is it's expensive, right? And so if you want to travel, you have to have money. And so, of course, I am a 401k with my company. I had my property. I I had my property that I had, but you know, I started thinking like, Chris, you need to make more money because like you want to enjoy life, right? You don't want to just save for retirement. And you know, saving for retirement is big, but living life now is big too. Like I don't want to just save for retirement, right? Retirement for me might be another 10, 12 years from now. So I want to live now. I don't want to wait for retirement. So I thought about, you know, what can I do to start living now? And that's when I kind of got into, you know, just trying to figure out like getting online, getting in Facebook groups and just seeing what was out there. And I came across a few things. I think the first thing I came across was Toro. And I remember thinking like when I was really looking at Toro, and this was a few years ago, so Toro was pretty hot. I remember thinking like, I don't want to be chasing no car. Like if somebody steals the car, and I know every business has that, right? So you can't get so crazy that like, what if this, right? You won't ever do anything. And I get that, and that'll like paralyze you. But my mindset was like, I don't want to have to be chasing a car. Like I don't want to have to worry about a car that somebody drove to North Carolina or to Ohio and it breaks down and somebody calls me in the middle of the night and asks me what I'm going to do about it. So I kind of said that Toro isn't for me. I thought about doing box truck, driving box trucks and stuff. And I actually even bought a Sprinter because I thought that I was going to do that. But I found out that the Sprinter game is tough too. There's a ton of people in it, but so much people were in it. I mean, it was driving down how much they were paying out to do these runs. And so I heard about Airbnb and short-term rentals. And so it was intriguing. And I thought, I was like, well, maybe if I could find a way to get a property on this thing, then maybe I could find a way to make this work. And so what I did was I got promoted. And so when I got promoted, they moved me out of my 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house. And I didn't want to sell it because, you know, I had saw how the market had shifted. I could have pulled a few $100,000 out of the house, but I was like, man, this needs to be our piggy bank, man. We need to have this as something that continues to pay us. So I was like, let's just go ahead and rent the house. And so I rented the house out. I'm not going to rehash that, but it ended up being a disaster. Somebody destroyed my house, basically. They ended up leaving, and I ended up having to spend about $13,000 to get it back up, to stand it back up. So I said, man, I'm about to put this thing on Airbnb because Airbnb is going to give me the ability to be able to, you know, check on the house more often, right? Pretty much what happened in my house is because it was during COVID and the company that was managing wasn't checking on it because, of course, they said COVID was an excuse. They didn't want to go in people's houses, and that was the problem. So I was like, man, if I go on Airbnb, man, I could basically have my cleaner, you know, go in every single time it turns over. So I thought that was a better option for that. And so I basically put my house on Airbnb. I moved out. I had already moved out, but I put it on Airbnb after I fixed it up. I furnished it. And so basically, man, it killed. I lie to you not, man. It was a dream come true. And I basically made about $6,000 a month on average, you know, for this property. And my mortgage payment was literally like $1,400, man. So I was like cash flowing like crazy. And I was like, dang, you can make money like this on Airbnb? And, you know, I had some problems. I had a ton of growing pains, but, you know, the point of this video is like, I want you guys to know that, like, basically I went through the process of figuring out this Airbnb game, right? So I started understanding like the things that I need to put in place to like prevent issues. And I had like a 6 to 8 month learning curve with my own property. And so after about 8 months or so, I get a letter from the HOA and there was like, you know, they basically don't want, short-term rentals aren't legal in there anymore. And so, you know, I basically said, hey, listen, I got an email from the HOA saying I could do this. I'm going to continue to keep doing this. So what they did was they called an HOA meeting and they had a vote, and the people, basically the neighborhood, voted me out of it. You know, they voted me out of it. And so what they did was, I was like, okay, they're going to be a $300 fine every time I do a rental. And the crazy thing is I was making so much money, like I was willing to do that. And so I was paying the $300 because I was making so much money. And what they did was they went back and they voted again to make an amendment that now it's going to double every single time. So the first time is 300, second time is 600, and it's 1200. I was like, oh man, they're going to put me out of business. So I had a choice. I said I could fight this thing because I did have paperwork where the previous folks that were over the HOA said that it was okay, or I could just let it go. And so I decided it wasn't worth the fight, and I just went on and let it go. And maybe I should have fought it, but you know, I wasn't the type of person that wanted to put that level of energy into fighting something like that. I said I would just rent it out. And luckily I was able to find a really good renter that I rented my property to. But what that time did was it taught me the formula for Airbnb and short-term rentals. And I learned all the automations and everything that I needed to know to be successful in the business. So I read up about stuff. I actually met this guy in Tampa through a group because I was like, man, I got to get back in this Airbnb game, but I didn't have a property, right? So because I didn't have a property, I was sitting here like, man, how am I going to do this without a property? And so I saw this guy, he was running an ad, he was in Tampa Bay, and he was basically saying like, you could buy, I would say, I don't want to say buy, but basically, yeah, you could basically, if you buy the furniture that he's going to buy, you buy it through him, that like you could basically take over these units. And so it was a couple of units he had in this building. So I flew out to Tampa Bay, me and my wife went out there and I talked to him, seemed like a decent guy. And I was like, okay, you know, he told me about his business. He took me to his little office that he had. And, you know, he had about 20 units or so that he was basically managing. And, you know, I was like, hey, then why are you getting rid of these units? Like if everything's doing good. And so he kind of told me his greater business plan was his business plan wasn't really to scale in that way. He wanted to kind of scale in a different way through more of the oversight and get out of the day to day. So I was like, okay, you know, sounds a little fishy, but you know, I wanted to get back into business, right? So I went on, I think I ended up paying him like $10,000 or something, maybe $8,000 for like 2 units, the furniture in the units. And so I took over, right? And so I was with him for about 2 months, 2 or 3 months. And over that 2 or 3 months, basically it was crazy. Like the first month I basically just broke even, right? So I made enough money just to basically pay him. And I can't remember exactly what the deal was. I think it was like a couple hundred, maybe $1,800, $2,000 for rent. And, you know, I was supposed to be making like $4,500, $4,800 a month. I was supposed to net like $1,500 to $2,000 a month, right? By the time it's all said and done. But basically the first 2 months, I was basically just making enough just to pay him and his cleaners that he had going, right? Because he had us on this deal where, you know, we were able to use his in-house cleaners and we were getting it for like $35, which was a ridiculous cleaning fee. And so, you know, it seemed like it was working out, but for 2 months, he was the only person that was getting money. And I was like, dude, like, I'm not making any money. And then he was like, oh, well, you know, it takes time to build up. And, you know, he was kind of managing how the rentals were coming in and stuff. And so I really didn't have control of stuff. And so I finally was like, hey, man, this ain't working, man. I'm out. And like, you told me I was going to make X amount of money. I ain't making it. Basically, I want my money back. I'm out. So, you know, he tried to, you know, BS around, but ultimately I put the money on the Amex. So I hit the button on Amex, and everybody knows about Amex. Shout out to Amex, you get your money back, right? So Amex sent me my money back, and then I got out of that deal. But through that, I kind of, you know, through him, I will say indirectly, I kind of learned the business more because I was picking this guy's brain pretty much 2 or 3 times a week, right? So I was learning the business and some of the automations that he had in place to run his business. So I was like, man, shoot, I'm gonna just do what he did. Because basically what he did was he got with a landlord, a property owner who had like this a multi-family building in Tampa. And he basically went to him and said, hey, I want to rent the whole building. I'll give you X, right? And so the guy was like, that ain't bad. Like, let me rent it to this one guy. It's only one guy I got to chase for like 6 units. So I was like, I could use the same formula and try to go after people. And so, of course, it took me a while, you know, of reaching out to people and really tweaking the formula of understanding what I need to say to people before I finally got the formula that folks really wanted, that really got me these rentals. And if you want that script, hey, reach out to me. I'll definitely send you the script. I'm not trying to gatekeep. It was just something. It was just me, figuring out over time how to talk to people. And of course, like I said before, part of it that helped me is my sales experience. But the bottom line is, so I pretty much learned all the skills I need to learn. And so I went out and I finally got my first 3 units, and I couldn't believe it. My wife couldn't believe it. She was like, "You got 3?" Actually, I got 2 first. It was 3 in the building, and I got 2 out of the 3. And basically, the third one, we had to wait for the third person to move out. And then I ended up getting a whole building. And it was like basically downtown Greenville. And man, I bankrolled a nothing out of this thing, man. Like this thing, I was making $2,500 to $3,000 a month profit each unit almost every month for almost 2 years, right? We had some downtimes and stuff in there too, but pretty much I say at least $2,000 a month minimum net. And so I learned the formula, man, and you guys can learn it too. And that's the thing I'm saying, like this story that I'm telling you guys, because I'm gonna wrap it up because I don't want this to be a 20-minute video. But this story that I'm telling you guys, man, this is over the course of about 1.5 years. So basically what I did was I went and I put together like an ebook of basically all the things I learned and all of the things I did to kind of learn this business. And I put it out there, and I'm going to be offering that in a link below. But that's pretty much my story of how I got started with short-term rentals. From there, once I mastered the art of, doing it locally, then that's when I did it in another place, right? That's when I went to Gulf Shores. I got a place in Gulf Shores. Basically, this ended up being an owner finance, right? I had some fun, so I put a few $1,000s down on a little place in Gulf Shores, and I got a place in Gulf Shores because I already mastered everything. So I basically just plugged it into the system that I already had. And I found me a good cleaner and a good handyman, and that was pretty much it. Like once I did those 2 things, it's simple, man, to make money in this business. If you get those 2 things and you have the automations, man, it really is just mailbox money. You are gonna have some challenges. I'm not gonna sit here and say that like it's gonna be easy peasy and you're just gonna make money and be rich. That ain't true. Like if you have the right automations in place, you will have way less issues. And that's pretty much the point where I'm at right now is like my wife manages the cleaners. That's pretty much the majority of the work that we do for this is she has to manage the cleaners. And that's because we want to. And that's because I can automate that too. But we manage the cleaners because we want to just make sure everybody gets fed from a standpoint of, spreading the love between our cleaners, because we could just automate it and just send it to cleaners randomly. But, we work with people's schedules and things like that. So we kind of just manage that. And managing that basically is just, telling the cleaner, hey, you got this cleaner at this time. And then, of course, looking at the pictures when they get done with the cleanings. And she does that on all the units. But it doesn't take a lot of time. It probably takes her an hour, maybe 2 hours a week for all of our units, which I think we're up to about 8 or 9 now. So it's pretty simple, man. So and then so from there, I went on to I bought my dream house, right? I bought my dream house, 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath house. I stayed in my dream house for about 2 years, man. The dream it got stale for me. I don't know if my wife agreed, but it got stale for me and I was ready to move. And going back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video, man, I was thinking more about like retirement and my path to retirement, and not just retirement, living my life now and making sure I had extra money now. And so, I bought the house during COVID. So I did have a very low interest rate, 2 point something, less than 3%. And so we had a great payment, right? But I was thinking, I was like, man, what if I could find a way to live for free? So that was kind of the evolution of how my brain went. And I was like, I want to find a way to live for free. And, people were like, you can't live for free. You're always going to have bills. And I was like, man, I'm going to find a way to live for free. And so I said, I'm going to use this Airbnb game to live for free. And, I was talking to people about it. And I said, I'm going to find me a duplex. I'm going to live on one side and Airbnb the other side. And so, oh my God. Anyway, so I had done take my wife out of a 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath house. So I couldn't just move into any duplex, right? And everybody knows duplexes. It's probably easy to find like 2-bedroom, 2-bath duplexes, stuff like that. But I knew I had to find something that was going to be reasonable. So I ended up finding a 3-bedroom, 3-bath duplex on East Side. So I found a 3-bedroom, 3-bath duplex on East Side. And so when I found that, I said, I'm about to live for free. So I did my research, of course, that I always do. I wanted to make sure that it was highways, check. I wanted to make sure it was by hospitals, check. And I wanted to make sure it was by the third H, hotels. So it ended up being by all 3. And when you find those 3 in the right area, you're gonna bankroll. Now that's some free sauce I just gave y'all right there, man. But that is a huge key to being successful in this business. That's the difference in people who make money year round like me, and some of these people, like in some of these states like Florida, that's going broke because tourism's down. Tourism does not impact my business. Like I get construction workers, I get medical students, I get people that are looking after their loved ones, I get people that's coming in for graduations because we're actually next to a college as well. So it doesn't matter. I get weddings because we're near a place where a whole bunch of weddings are. We're close to the lake. So I'm telling you, man, if you find the right places, there ain't no such thing as seasonality. Like the only thing that's seasonal about my business is during certain times of year, I charge more per night. That's about it. Either way, it's gonna be booked year round. And I don't even know if that's really a thing because really, I had some months in November and December that were more than some of my summer months, to be honest. So, I mean, you just gotta know how to run the play, man. I'm telling you, if you know how to run the play, you'll make money. So let's finish up this story. So I ended up moving into the duplex. My wife hated me for it, but we moved in it and now we live for free. So that's basically my story of, how I went from, starting in the short-term rental business, some of the bumps that I went through, and how I got to the point where I'm living for free. And this is something that anybody could do, man. All you got to do is you have to have the patience, you have to have the know-how, and you have to have the motivation to get out there and actually make it happen, right? Again, it was not easy. I'm not gonna sit here and get on here like some of these gurus out here telling y'all it's easy. No, it's not easy. You have to be willing to grind, but I promise you, this is one thing I can guarantee you. Once you figure it out, and once you get the automations in place in the right area, it will bankroll for you, 100%. And I am 100% living for free. My duplex, every single month, except for the first month, has been 100% covered. And when I say it's been covered, I mean all of my expenses. I'm talking about the light bill, I'm talking about the cable bill, I'm talking about everything, because it makes enough money to cover everything and put a little bit of money in my pocket. Now, for my duplex, if I look at the cost, like, it's not putting a ton of money in my pocket because, of course, it's paying all the utilities for both sides and the cleanings and all that stuff. But it pays my it pays pretty much 100% all my utilities, and it pays the mortgage 100%, the insurance and everything. What will you be in a situation if you had that paid for you? It will change. It will be life changing, wouldn't it be? 100% it will be. For most people, that is going to be the largest expense you're going to have. Imagine if you could just wipe that off and make that zero for you. All right. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this video. I know this was a long video. If you like content like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. And tell me if this is a journey that you think you want to go on. Reach out to me. I'm definitely going to be having my ebook that is going to be available. The link is in the comments. You can click on that and get that ebook and get your journey going, man. Don't delay, man. Don't delay. Quit worrying about what if, man. Make it happen. Start running those plays so you can get that money.